You're considering a senior living community for your mom because you don't think she's safe at home. And senior living communities are all safe, right? But are they created equal? What safety measures are actually in place for fall prevention or emergency response? What monitoring and support options are available for residents who might wander or become disoriented? How is security maintained, especially regarding visitor access? Should you be concerned? Hi, and welcome to Desperately Seeking Senior Living, the podcast. I'm your host, Valerie Lynn, and this is the first episode of 2025. But before we talk safety, I want to start by thanking all of you for listening in over the years. And yes, as a regular listener, you can probably tell that I have that crazy cough cold thing that's been going around, and I waited as long as I could to record this episode, so bear with me. Over the years, many of you shared that when you first found the show, you actually binge listened to every single episode. For a recent listener who shared that means that was over 150 episodes that they listened to. And then others of you have reached out who actually work in senior living, and you've shared that you shared episodes with your staff and made them a part of your training, and that you actually changed the way you operate in your senior living community based on the show. And I can't tell you how much all of these stories mean to me. The show has always been a passion for educating, and it's based on real life stories. It's based on my years of working in senior living and the thousands of families I've helped over those years. So thank you for listening, and please keep reaching out. I love to hear from you. So I'm kicking off 2025 with our first episode about safety because we often find that it's the holidays when families are discovering that maybe mom or dad or grandma or grandpa isn't safe at home anymore. You're coming together as a family during the holidays and you're seeing things that maybe you hadn't seen before, and you're comparing notes. And safety is often the number one concern. So this episode is all about questions that you should ask and things to look for when you're touring senior living communities. But before we dive in, I need to let you know that in 2025, I'm moving the show to once a month. As many of you know, I have a company called ClearPath Senior Living Solutions where I personally guide families on this journey. So I want to make sure that I'm giving myself enough time with ClearPath as I look to grow that part of my company and to make room for a couple of other projects. If you're a regular listener, you may remember that last year I started speaking on a national level, and I have more speaking opportunities coming up in 2025. I also recognize that many of you like to get your content from different places. And so one of the projects I really want to focus on in 2025 is adding the content from the podcast to YouTube. So as I work on these projects, you'll now find new episodes of Desperately Seeking Senior Living airing the first Monday of every month. And we've got some really great guests and partnerships lined up for this year. Now, we're going to have bonus content dropping as well, so make sure you subscribe to the show, and also head on over to YouTube and subscribe there as well. Even if that's not where you get the podcast, when you subscribe, it's a free way to support the show by helping other families find us. So thank you again. And now let's talk safety in senior living. Welcome to Desperately Seeking Senior Living, a podcast for sons, daughters, grandkids, spouses, and all caregivers who suddenly find themselves tangled in the search for senior living and care. If you like today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and check out our doable download in today's show notes for a printable summary of the show and a bonus tip. You're listening to our doable tips, short answers to your questions. Don't see your question listed? Send us a note. Then don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an answer. Most of the families I work with are absolutely tormented about putting their mom or dad in a senior living community. And those words, Just those words that are used, that phrase, putting mom in senior living, it reflects the guilt and the worry about making the right decision. And very often, the biggest concern is about safety. It's the number one reason that a move is considered in the first place. And here are some of the concerns that I hear. What if my mom falls and no one notices? What if they're not getting their medications on time? What if they're lonely or scared? What if they don't make it to a meal? What if my mom isn't bathing and she gets an infection? What if my brother, who has tried to steal from my mom several times and who she doesn't want to see, what if he tries to see her? So, in this episode, I'm going to walk you through everything you need to know about safety in senior living communities, from what to look for during your visit to the questions that you have to ask, and even some red flags that may require a plan B on your part. So, whether you're just starting to think about senior living or you're actively touring communities right now, this episode is going to give you the tools to make sure your loved one is not just safe, but truly thriving in their new home. I recently worked with a family whose father was living independently in his own home, but he was starting to experience some memory loss and some mobility issues. After a minor fall and some other health concerns, the family finally decided that it was time to look at senior living options. But safety was their absolute top priority for a couple of reasons. They not only wanted to make sure that their dad didn't fall, but they also wanted to make sure that he couldn't just walk out the front door. But they didn't feel like he was quite ready for memory care. This line between assisted living and memory care is actually something that I talk more about in episode 47. It can be really difficult to know the right place for your loved one and where they fit in. So, as we started to visit communities, we focused heavily on safety at the front desk. This was their main concern. And so we looked for communities that had round the clock staffing, which was so important for this family to feel reassured. They wanted to make sure that their dad could get immediate help and that there would be someone there to help him if he did walk right out that front door. The family was shocked to learn that many assisted living communities do not staff their front desk 24/7. In many cases, staff leaves at 5 p.m., and even though the community locks their doors at that time, their dad could be inside and walk right out that front door. Now, we did find a community that actually staffs the front desk 24/7 and is not only there, and yes, they still lock their doors after business hours, but they also offered something called a Wander Guard. It's a wearable GPS tracker as an extra safety measure. And this is for anyone with short term memory loss. So it was a perfect fit. But what if the family hadn't asked the right questions? What if they had just assumed that someone's always going to be at the front desk? Most families share that they think assisted living equals safety and that they feel like there's a standard that all assisted livings abide by, that they're automatically designed a certain way. But that's just not the case. While there are many states that regulate safety on certain levels, and notice I didn't say all, those safety regulations include fire doors, fire extinguishers, medical documentation, and sprinkler systems. But it's up to each individual community when it comes to how they manage those safety protocols or what extra safety measures that they may add, such as those GPS trackers, which, by the way, you can absolutely add on your own, even if the community you love doesn't offer it. So, in this episode, we're going to talk about physical safety, medical safety, security systems, and finally, emotional safety. But before we start, I want to acknowledge that this is a highly emotional topic. Many of us have had to make very difficult decisions about our parents or grandparents or other loved ones' care. And So many of you have shared the guilt that you felt at making what you later realized was the wrong choice. But there's just no way you can know for sure. I don't live in any of these communities. You don't live in any of these communities. And so the podcast, this episode is designed to help you ask the right questions and help you make the right choice, but nothing is foolproof. So, as always, go with your gut. Okay, let's start with physical safety. First, fall prevention features. Now, listen, no care setting can guarantee that they can prevent a fall, but falls remain a top concern for seniors. So, here are some things to look for when touring a community: wide, well lit hallways with handrails, intermittent seating in longer hallways, non slip flooring or low pile carpeting, sturdy chairs with arms in the dining room and common areas. In the bathrooms, look for grab bars and 0 to low threshold showers to prevent tripping. Most communities will also add additional grab bars where you need them. And now you may run into older buildings with bathtubs. Yes, those are still around and can still be found in senior living communities. But don't let that stop you from choosing a community that you really like. Sometimes, if that's the only thing keeping you from moving forward, you can actually negotiate a bathtub remodel where they do a cutout, giving that walk in shower access. So make sure you ask about that if that is an obstacle. Some communities even have physical therapists on site who can work with residents on strength and balance exercises to help prevent those falls in the first place. On a side note, even in house physical therapy is still going to have to be doctor ordered. You can't just sign up. Something else to be really aware of, something that I see all the time when I tour communities, and I'm not even sure why this is still a part of senior living, but you may notice very low or very high cabinets. Cabinets that even you or I might struggle to get into. And so when you're touring and you're thinking about storage, keep in mind that these cabinets could pose a fall or an injury risk. And it's important to think about alternatives before move in day. Now, most communities are not going to allow you to modify their kitchens and bathrooms, but I do have a link that I'll put in show notes to an article with some tips to consider. All right, let's move on to day to day security, which is also a critical part of your checklist. From visitor access to personal emergencies and disaster response. In most communities, that front entrance is staffed during business hours, and in some, like we talked about before, 24/7. Most communities require a sign in, sign out sheet. This is for first responders so they know who's in the building during an emergency. The front doors lock usually at dusk, whether that front desk is manned or not. And all other common doors around the community are always locked and accessible with a resident key or a key code. So, how do they screen all visitors? Are there protocols in place to prevent unauthorized entry? Once those doors are locked, the only access is with a code or key that only family members or residents would have. Anyone else is going to have to ring the doorbell. And every assisted living and memory care community has a wake staff overnight to answer that door. And I absolutely hear you right now. Your mom just moved in and you forgot about the key code. You went to visit, it was after hours. If you know, you know. It may have taken you a while to get in because it can take a while for staff to answer that door after hours. But when they did answer the door, you most likely said who you were there to visit. If you didn't, then staff would most likely not let you in. But this is an important question to ask. How are these visitors handled? Again, not all communities are created equal. Some have 24/7 staff monitoring the front desk, some only staff during the day. Some have security cameras monitoring the grounds, most don't. Some are gated, most aren't. And let's talk about protocols for community emergencies. This is another really important question to ask. What is their training for the staff? And how prepared are they for situations like power outages, fire, severe weather? One community that I worked at had regular safety drills in addition to the ones that were required by the state. And most communities also have backup power generators. One community not only had the regular drills and the extra drills, but the maintenance director walked every new hire through the safety protocols. They didn't just read about it in the handbook, they were actually walked through the building and shown where to go in the event of certain emergencies. And this actually reminds me about the very first community that I worked in. It was an independent living community in Springfield, Illinois. And I will never forget the day that the fire alarm went off, followed by the words that you never want to hear: "This is not a drill." I immediately went to my floor assignment, which was the upper floor. And my job was to make sure that every resident stayed in their apartment, which goes against every instinct that you'll have in that experience. I was terrified. The smoke was reaching the upper floor. I had to keep telling residents to stay in their rooms. You see, in addition to the automatic hallway fire doors, each apartment door was also a fire door. And as long as we weren't in the direct path or place of the fire, it was safer to be behind those closed doors. And luckily, it was just a small fire. It was quickly located because of our training. And that's the type of training you want to ask about. Okay, let's move on to medical safety, which is also a primary reason that families choose senior living communities over aging in place. So, here's what you should expect and questions to ask. Assisted living or memory care communities should offer professional monitoring of vital signs and health conditions. So ask, how often is their nurse in the building? Some communities have nurses actually physically there 24/7, and others say they have 24/7 nursing, but it's just on call. So their nurse isn't physically in the building. Second, medication management to prevent errors. So, what checks and balances does the community have in place to prevent errors? How often do they audit their procedures? And what type of training is offered to the staff? Number three, immediate response to medical emergencies. What's the community's expectation for staff response time? And you don't want to miss my absolutely mind blowing episode. I was mind blown when I found this out on if your loved one's community will call 911 for their independent residents. That's episode 113. If you haven't listened in, you definitely want to check that out. Number four, coordinated care with healthcare providers. So they are communicating with your loved one's doctors. Number five, regular health assessments. How often are they monitoring your loved one's care needs, updating that care plan? The answer should be as often as necessary. One of the senior living communities that I worked at had very clear expectations of their caregivers. Caregivers were expected to respond to a resident who pushed their call button needing help within 3 minutes. This wasn't just an expectation that they talked about. They had a plan. They performed drills and regularly monitored response times through an electronic system. And it wasn't just one community's policy. This was the company's goal for all their communities. The important thing to keep in mind here is that, again, every community, every company is different. So, asking the right questions can help you find the right community. But there's something else to keep in mind. Safety isn't just about physical measures and medical care. It's also about emotional and social well-being. Another big reason that families choose senior living is socialization. And the best communities create environments where residents feel secure enough to maintain their independence, socially connected with other residents, mentally stimulated through activities and events, respected and valued as individuals. And this is a big one, comfortable expressing concerns. So, how can you evaluate if a senior living community is truly safe? Sometimes it's as simple as knowing your loved one and going with your gut. But you should also go at different times of the day. Watch how staff interact with residents and keep a close eye on cleanliness and maintenance of the community. I always like to say, love is in the details. And if those small details are taken care of, then probably these bigger ones are going to be too. And then ask the critical questions. What are the staff to resident ratios? What's the staff turnover rate? How are those emergencies handled? What safety trainings do staff receive? And don't be afraid to ask about those state inspection reports and violation history. But again, most importantly, trust your instincts. If something feels off, investigate further. A quality community will welcome your questions and demonstrate transparency about their safety measures. They should be really proud of them. And remember, no senior living community can guarantee zero incidents. That's just not realistic. What matters is having systems in place to prevent problems and addressing any problems quickly when and if they do occur. The goal isn't just to keep our loved ones safe. It's to help them thrive in an environment where they feel secure and you feel secure about them being there, a place for them to maintain their independence and dignity and find purpose and joy in life. And hopefully, this episode helps make your journey a little more doable. Thank you for joining me today on Desperately Seeking Senior Living and bearing with my cold. If you're thinking about senior living options right now, remember that there's a downloadable guide in today's show notes summarizing this episode, along with a few extra tips and resources to help you in your search. If you enjoyed today's episode, if you found it helpful, please subscribe and share it with anyone else that you think might need it. And as always, if you have any questions or need additional support, feel free to reach out. Until next time, I'm Valerie Lynn, and remember, you're not alone on this journey. Together, we will find the perfect place for your loved one and help you go from desperate to doable. Today's episode is brought to you by ClearPath Senior Living Solutions. ClearPath helps families find assisted living, memory care, and other resources. Find our contact information in today's show notes. Check out this episode's doable download in show notes for details including industry terms and definitions we discussed, as well as a bonus tip. Have questions or your own tips to share? Leave us a message. We'd love to hear from you. And until next time, make it doable.